Now a certain woman which had an issue of blood 12 years had suffered many things of many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was nothing bettered, but rather grew worse. When she had heard of Jesus, came in the press behind, and touched his garment. For she said, If I may touch but his clothes, I shall be made whole. And straightway the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of that plague. Mark 5:25-29. The first time I went to hospital was at age 3 when I shattered my elbow. This story is about my second time, age 53. About a year prior, I started to sometimes experience pain in my abdomen. I thought it was my liver since the pain was located in that area. But one day the pain was intense and relentless and kept me up for 2 days. So I went to my primary care physician, who sent me to a specialist. This man gave me a CT scan which revealed that I had a large kidney stone. I was then sent to a physician and urologist who forcefully presented options for surgery. I was uncomfortable with that and instead sought alternative methods. So I took Chancapedra, so-called stonebreaker herbs, every day and guzzled pure lemon juice, as many on the internet claimed that these dissolved their kidney stones. But after around 6 months, I had another episode of intense ongoing pain. So I went back to the specialist, who produced an even clearer CT scan. My very large 22.5 times 20 times 16 millimeter kidney stone was clearly blocking my right ureter, the tube connecting my right kidney to my bladder. Also, waste fluid was building up because of this. To save my kidney and end discomfort, I consented to an operation. The agreed procedure was to cut through my back into my kidney, then suck out the stone from the ureter. As a person who lives in isolation, I had previously decided to not get a COVID-19 shot. But since I knew that hospitals were breeding grounds for the coronavirus, I got vaccinated in preparation. Also, before entering hospital, I was required to take a COVID-19 test despite being provably vaccinated. I have a card to prove that. Then a blood test where a tourniquet was put onto my arm to help squeeze out a sizable sample into the needle's vial. Then an EKG to monitor the precise electrical signals of my heart and entire rest of my circulatory system. So at 6:30 a.m. on July 22nd, 2021, my parents drove me in for surgery. After waiting was over, I was asked to remove my clothes and change into a hospital gown and hospital socks, besides the required mask. They had a designated gurney for me to lie upon. Shortly thereafter, some hospital staff demanded COVID-19 results and blood test results, since my primary care office failed to provide that information. Since trying to contact their office via phone failed, I had to retake the COVID-19 test and blood test right there. So an older Asian nurse with a strange getup resembling a Halloween costume tried to take a blood sample. She kept sticking me, claiming to be unable to find a vein. This resulted in a sizable bruise. So someone else took over and did the blood test. I cannot recall their making me retake the EKG, but they did later subject me to repeated blood pressure cuff tests. I was also told that a device would be inserted down my throat for breathing aid. The physician appeared a young, thin Greek man, the man who I met before, who forcefully pushed the surgery idea. After they put something into an IV, I went unconscious until after the surgery, which felt like just a minute or two later. I was in an uncomfortable hospital bed, no other patients in the room. I had a catheter inserted into my penis with its protruding tube and plastic bag. As for the IV inserted into my arm, they added antibiotics to the saline drip since I caught an infection there. I also had excessive internal bleeding from the operation. This made the contents of my catheter bag dark red. I had no appetite, especially with the reputation of hospital food being bad. I only ate 2 small cups of ice cream in my entire time there. I ultimately lay in bed for about 30 hours since I was torn up and it hurt to move. I live on the computer, but the room computer was unreachable and probably only for staff. Boredom led me to access the television, which was worse than usual since numerous channels were added that were infomercials touting the importance of hospitals and patients' medical concerns, propaganda designed to make more money. I was in brief contact with a superfluous number of people, perhaps as many as 25. If I assume correctly and that none of them work for free, this would lead to an unnecessarily high bill. For instance, a black woman came into my room and announced that she was my nurse for the night shift. She went around, adjusted some things, then disappeared. I never saw her again. Other nurses acted as night shift staff instead. One nurse asked if I had any pain. I said yes, my right quadricep felt like it was on fire. She was totally confused and said that she didn't know her muscles. Although I probably should have said right thigh, a trained nurse should know about the human body. In the morning, 2 men walked in announcing that they were here to fix the computer. I angrily told them to do what they said to do. After monkeying around for a bit, they left. Then one came back to say that they had the wrong room. I got zero sleep throughout the night and intermittently stared at the clock. In the morning, I persuaded a nurse to remove my catheter. She said she had to first inject the balloon inside my penis with liquid, and did so. I felt excruciating pain. She then removed the apparatus. I was also subjected to another CT scan. I wanted to go home as soon as feasible and inquired when that would be. But I got extremely conflicting answers. For example, a man claiming to be my physician's assistant, thin Greek and looking somewhat older, told me that I first needed to be walking around. A nurse responded that it would be when my current IV bag was empty. Another nurse said it would be after a while and when I got more tests. Yet another nurse said it would be when my physician phoned in personally. Towards the end of my stay, they moved me from the bed to a chair, still with the IV attached. Since my physician's assistant told me that I needed to prove that I could walk about, I intended to do that. But whenever I would get up from the chair, an alarm would go off, alert the nurse's station, and someone would call in to ask what the problem was. Finally, a nurse came in to reprimand me for getting out of the chair unnecessarily. I angrily responded that I lived in a free country. I became irate and convinced that they were doing whatever they could to keep me as long as possible to make more money. I got a hold of my mother on the phone and exploded in uncharacteristic vulgarity to unload my thoughts and feelings. My parents then got a hold of my physician, whom I had a nice talk with. So the conditions were set that I would submit to another blood test, which I did, and urinate a couple times. Then he would authorize the release papers. I urinated into a measuring pitcher. Out came dark red liquid along with the blood clot. The second time was also very dark red. Then my parents arrived, where a nurse discussed the release papers, which discussed basic common sense things which were unnecessary to mention. Then at 5:30 p.m. on July 23rd, I was wheeled out to my parents' car, got in, and went home. Stay tuned for my recovery from hospital.